JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks, the big JC. What's going on, my friend? How are you?
Great, man. Just another rocking and rolling Thursday. Had a really good show just now. You were part
Mm.
of it. And thank you for your segment and all that. And ready to talk Gamecock sports, man. Just living the dream.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I hear you. First thing, really quick, breaking news, I guess, on social media. Everybody's favorite person, Mark Ryan. But either way, no matter the source, I don't know exactly what Greg Sankey's speaking at today, but he says that apparently the league is looking at going to a single division. They're leaning very heavily in that direction. They would be moving away from two divisions, no 4-team pod system. So it'd be all 16 teams once Texas and OU were added. All 16 top two go to the SEC championship. Your thoughts on that model?
I think it's the easiest model to implement because you're going to have a lot of jockeying in this league, as we all know, as to who's in what pod and all that. I don't necessarily like it. And I'll tell you why. I think there could be a more creative way to do it. And what you do, Chris, in that situation, let's say, and this has happened before in this league, Alabama and Auburn are the top two teams, not only in the SEC, but the country. They've clinched the top two spots. They're both undefeated. They're playing in the Iron Bowl. And then they got to play the next week. You know, what's going to be the strategy there? We're going to be like the NFL and you're going to sit guys? Will the Iron Bowl lose its luster? Will it just kind of be like, well, this is a fun thing that happens like when Florida and Florida State played back-to-back in a season-ending game in a bowl twice in the 90s? I mean, I just think that 16 is just it's way too much. Now, the ACC pulled it off during the pandemic with a 15-team league, Clemson and Notre Dame. So maybe it's fine. I just, to me, what that does is it puts a constrictor on access to the SEC championship game. And, you know, and I know, look, you know, nobody's won it outside of the quote unquote Big Six ever, but you know, how big was it for Carolina to go that one time? How big was it for Missouri to go back to back? How big was it for Mississippi State in the 90s? You know, those teams are, it's going to be really hard for any of them to get to Atlanta again. You know, all that said, there is a 12-team playoff coming. And, you know, so if you can finish higher in the standings or whatever, then, you know, you have a shot. But then the playoffs going to kind of be determined by the rankings, not the standings. So then, I mean, I don't know. I don't think 2 8-team divisions would be feasible. I was intrigued by the pods, but, you know, to me, maybe they could have thought about something a little more out of the box and had a semifinal Saturday, if you will. You know, in other words, like, you know, you have 4 pods, right? The champions of those 4 pods play on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Now, I know you'd have to move some rivalries around to up a week or whatever. And then, you know, everybody else in the league also gets an extra game. So you are going to be playing some teams twice, just by virtue of if you're the number 15 team and you play the 16 team, you may have played them already or whatever, but fine. But everybody still got that extra game on that weekend. The Big Ten did that during the pandemic, or theoretically was going to do that during the pandemic. And I thought that was kind of a nice creative idea that gives more teams access. So I think what it does is it sort of, it's not going to ruin the game in Atlanta because that's going nowhere. It's a cash cow and it's a big time deal. But I think it just makes things very difficult on a lot of teams to get that shot. And I kind of like it when everybody gets a shot. So yeah, that's my take. That's just an opinion. So
yeah, no, I feel the same way. Listen, it just it's already a difficult path for teams like South Carolina, Kentucky, you know, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. And now it just gets even harder.
and you know, look, they're looking at going to this 3-6-6 scheduling model thing, right? You know, so you're gonna play the same 3 teams every year. Then you're gonna play 6, and then you go 6. That's if they go to 9. And I'm like, well, that's a lot. That's a big luck of the draw, because what if you? And we see that this year with A&M and Auburn. I mean, you draw A&M and Auburn one year, and you're like, oh my God, that's terrible. Well, A&M and Auburn this year, you're lucky, right? And so a lot of it's going to come down when you're talking about that many teams. A lot of it's going to come down to who has the easier schedule. at the end of the day. And, that's I don't know if that's the greatest way to determine who plays for a conference championship.
Yeah. Well, JC, let's move to current day South Carolina football and what happened over the weekend. Gamecocks falling to the Florida Gators 38-6. I know we talked obviously this morning on your show, but thoughts on that game. I mean, I know normally we break it down: offense, defense, special teams. I feel like you can kind of just bundle this all into one because in all phases, I guess special teams was the only reason you scored, right? Kai Kroger continues to show why I guess he's the best quarterback on the roster, and Dak Joyner maybe shows why he's the most underutilized playmaker on the roster. But either way, offensively, defensively, I mean, pick your poison. It was ugly from the start. It was abysmal. I've said all week that I really feel for the Gamecocks that made the trip to Gainesville and toughed it out and endured that. But, it's really hard to sit here in our normal conversation, right? We're kind of dissecting what went right, what went wrong. I mean, it all went wrong Saturday, man. And what stood out to you from that game against Florida?
I'll say this, as someone who sat through the 2008 Florida-South Carolina game, 56-6, I know the feeling for you folks that went down to Gainesville. But I got a nice Whataburger on the way back to Jacksonville. That's what I remember about that trip. I was like, they don't have Whataburgers, or didn't have them in South Carolina. So I was like, oh, Whataburger, man. But anyway, I Chris, when the game started, I knew the defense could not really go in and play on its heels, and they did. And I'll tell you, from the first snap, man, I was watching on TV. I had it up on the big screen in here, and I just sensed that the guys didn't have a lot of energy on defense. The energy just was lacking. I thought one of the biggest plays early on was Darius Rush, and I had to go back and look at it on the replay because it didn't seem like it in real time. But on the replay, he dropped maybe a pick six early. Yeah. Carolina gets that. That's kind of their good start, Carolina. It didn't happen. They what was it? 15-play drive took 7 minutes off the clock before the game actually even get the ball. And then there was just no plan on offense. And I think, if the Missouri game didn't torpedo the few remaining, let's blame the players, Marcus Satterfield fans out there, I think Florida certainly did. Yeah. And there was just no plan. And the offense reverted back to like pre-Vandy. I mean, they didn't do anything like they did. Vandy was nice. They defend the whole field, run some misdirection, do this, that, and the other, spread them out. I mean, it looked like the Gamecocks were running into a brick wall. I mean, I have a buddy that covers another program. They're not happy with their offensive coordinator at that particular program. And he said, nobody's happy with this guy here. He's like, but my God, South Carolina's on another level. It's like, man, there's 8 in the box. Let's just run it up the middle, and you're like, unbelievable. And look, I went and did some research. I get 17 Power 5 opponents during the Shane Beamer era with Marcus Satterfield calling the plays. When the game is in doubt, right? In other words, I'm not counting the garbage touchdown against Georgia or the 2 against A&M last year. Right. And then obviously there's a special team score against Florida. South Carolina's been shut out 4 times. Shut out. This program played. How many times was Will Muschamp shut out? I don't. I mean, and everybody complains about his lack of offense, but I mean, now Will would kick a field goal down 40, just to make sure he got on the board. But that's okay. Shut out. I mean, in those games, if it hadn't been for acts of mercy with other teams emptying their bench, A&M would have shut them out. Georgia would have shut them out. I think we could all live with that. I think we could live with even Clemson last year, and that was embarrassing. Against the 13th ranked defense in the SEC, that's inexcusable. I mean, you just can't do it. When you're getting shut out, or you basically go to battle with no offense in 23.5% of your games against Power 5 competition over 2 years, and we're not even done with this year yet. That's bad offense. That's not, we need to make some corrections. That's not, we need to execute, or we need to pray to the ball security gods, or whatever the heck he was saying in his press conference this week. And no, you're not going to get off the hook with a terrible play call by saying you were setting up the fake punt. Come on. I mean, basically taking credit for Pete Limbo's genius. I'm like, no, you can't do that. So I think it's over. I think, a lot of people, and I'll defend Shane Beamer right for the next two games. I'll say, okay, you're trying like heck to win and compete, and you maybe don't want to throw chaos into your program internally right now. I understand that line of thinking. If it were me, probably would have considered canning him after Georgia, because then you had the two get right games and then Kentucky, then an open week to get whoever to kind of get used to calling it. Because I don't buy that there's nobody that can do it. I think that when you do something like that, you need some time to kind of stretch. You know what I'm saying? Would have probably still done it after Missouri, because you got Vandy, and obviously just by doing what Satterfield does not normally do, you put a lot of points on Vandy in the first half. So, but right now, you got this week. We're at Thursday, so there's no firing this week. And then next week, you got Thanksgiving, Clemson, the rival. I mean, that week for any staff, for both staffs, Clemson, Carolina, whoever, that week's always condensed in prep time. Mm-hmm. And so I get it. If it goes much past Clemson, win or lose, I think that's the point where everybody that does this and that follows this program, that loves this program, needs to really take a look at the head guy, right? I mean, because that's and I think we all admire and appreciate Shane Beamer, and I think he's done so much right as the head coach. But if you got to plug the leak in your ship, or you're going to sink. And hubris sank the Titanic. It could certainly sink South Carolina football.
That's a great way to put it, JC. That's kind of one of those drop the mic moments, I feel like. And I will say, to your point,
I'm sure my face is going to be on the Instagram doing that one later, man. That's funny.
Hey, you know where my mind's at. For sure. But either way, I will say this to your point about you mentioned the football gods, and I'm sure that was one of the moments where Sat knew that his face was going to be on the Instagram, if you will. Satterfield pressers have become just comedy gold, my friend. Just
comedy gold. I mean, must see TV, man.
They are like the wildest. Like some of the stuff he says. Like I don't normally pay that much attention to coordinator pressers, but my goodness, I mean, the quotes. It's a quote factory. Satterfield is a quote factory, dude.
He all right. So likable people, like I don't look. I know I've met and interacted with every coach, probably every coach on that staff except Marcus Satterfield, and that wasn't because I didn't like. I mean, there was a whole off season there. I could have gotten to know him before he coached it down, but it's just for some reason I didn't. In some ways, he's just a dude on the street or something. He's kind of like a cocky or whatever, but he does say some things that make him sound intelligent, or at least like he's got some thought behind him. I just think it's the wrong thought. I just can't understand. I don't like throwing the players under the bus. I don't, because it's clear to everybody that coaches football, man. I get calls from other staffs, people that I know, people that have been at South Carolina, people that have never been at South Carolina but keep up with the program. People close to Clemson and to keep up with it. They all universally say this offense has no chance.
Yeah,
and they can better, more eloquently than me, point out why. Like here's it, and I don't know enough to repeat it, but like everything, it'd take forever, kind of like reading Sat's playbook would. But it's almost universal, and so how in the world and in what planet is that your player's fault? I mean, how is that? Spencer Rattler looks more and more lost every single game. Mm-hmm. Like you can tell when he looks at the sidelines, and I think he's had a tremendously good attitude about it, Chris, to be honest.
Yeah.
You can just tell he's just like staring into the oblivion, oh my God.
That JC, I will say, is something we don't talk about probably enough, is there were so many questions about his attitude and what type of teammate is he? And
he's been tremendous.
The Netflix document. Like, dude, I think all things considered, he's been a great teammate for not throwing his helmet on the sideline and saying, I'm just not going back out there. Like somebody else can take this beating because I'm not doing it. Like
I'm telling you, I mean, and it's been rough. They do nothing to help him. Nothing. I think at some point you just have to admit, man, you may need to roll him out, get him out of the pocket, get him run, not necessarily running the ball, but on the move. Shoot, man, NFL team. I mean, all this talk about the NFL, and I watch NFL football, and it's the same sport but a different game. But this isn't even. There's nothing NFL about this. It's just way overly complex on the back end, and then it's like an Adobe product. Like you got Adobe Photoshop or whatever, and I used to use Photoshop and stuff, and I would imagine that it's like super complex. I mean, or I always thought it was like super complex to get things done with a lot of Adobe products on the computer. And they didn't necessarily work all that well. And it was unnecessarily complex. And then you wouldn't always get beautiful photos. And I think that's kind of a roundabout analogy that, okay, you're doing all this unnecessarily. And then the product, you spit it out, it's awful. So, I think it's even beyond simplification. I just think it's bad. And they need to chunk it. And after the Clemson game, Shane Beamer probably should chunk it and say, okay, guys, we're going to meet and take what few plays we do well, I guess, package them together, hand it to Pete Limbo, let him come up with some razzle dazzle because he's good at it. I mean, if he can do it on special teams, I'm sure he can do it on offense. Let him call the bowl and go hire a new OC to get in here and get this program, patch the hole to where this program can continue to ascend.
Yeah. JC, let's talk defense, right? Because we spend all season talking the offense, deservedly so. But I've seen some chatter and heard some chatter about Clayton White this week. And you give up 374 yards on the ground. That kind of comes with it. Do you attribute, though, the defense's struggles over the last about 2 years or so, do you attribute that more so to the them being on the field so long because the offense is so putrid? I mean, the defense I don't think's had a terrible year. They've been about kind of what I expected. Run defense still an issue. Secondary's been fantastic, really similar to last year. But I mean, what do you make of it? Because I could argue that I think, Clayton White's safe, fine. I'm certainly not leading any charge of, well, let's change them both while we're at it. But I think next year could prove to be a very big season for Clayton White in regards to, especially once you start getting these recruits in, right? Some of these high profile guys to start seeing some improvement in the run defense, because while the offense was anemic, I mean, the defense didn't have much of a better day on Saturday against Florida.
Well, that side of the ball needs to be held accountable for the starts in games and also certain games, not all games. Sometimes they start really fast. Yeah. And they've been very resilient this year. And I think Clayton White's really good at making halftime adjustments. Maybe those adjustments have to come quicker because a difference between being behind 7-0 and 28, I think they've played hard. The injury thing about the line, you're missing Mo Kaba, I know, but you clearly did not jump in the portal and get linebackers last year when you could have. Two in particular that were guys with South Carolina ties. One's at Missouri right now, and he's probably an all-SEC guy. And then one's at Alabama starting on defense. And so you passed and you doubled down, and you probably shouldn't have. I think that there are good linebackers that are young in this program, like Stone Blanton and Westmoreland and Pup Howard coming in, and that position talent-wise is going to be fine. I think the defensive line individually, you've seen some guys play pretty well, like Tonka Hemingway, Zach Pickens. I think as a whole, that unit's been disappointing for 2 years. Not in a, oh man, they're just bad way. They're just very inconsistent and don't always play up to their potential. And I think that's coaching. You got to get them to play. They're not going to play up to their potential every snap of every game, but you can't have Jekyll and Hyde. Is Clayton White safe? I think he is. I think Shane Beamer, as the head football coach at the University of South Carolina, needs to mandate some changes coaching wise on that side, and not necessarily, like I said, because you're not terrible, but you can upgrade. And there's coaches out there that would come to South Carolina, in my opinion, it'd be significant upgrades on
Mhm.
that side. I think, so far the hiring philosophy's kind of been like, well, who knows who, and let's hire them. And obviously, I think Sterling Lucas has done a good job
Where have
recruiting
I
and
heard? Where
coaching.
have I heard that before, JC? Why,
Yeah,
why does that?
who do we
Why does that
know?
seem so familiar?
Who do we know? And I think it. Obviously having connections
Yeah.
and knowing people because you're comfortable working with them. I get it,
Mhm.
but you got to get guys that are good. And I don't even know that the guys on defense they could hire. They both have connections to South Carolina, so. I mean, you know them. So there you go. But they're also upgrades.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how it's going to shake out. I'm with you, though, that we all know that the number one problem is Marcus Satterfield and his offense in this program. Lock, stock, no, and they put the defense in horrible positions, right? And that's part of it. But I do think, as far as accountability goes, when you're talking about the games that really get away, where the Gamecocks get blown out, and there's been a lot lately, the defense does not show up early, and there's just some kind of disconnect there early in games that gets them behind, particularly on the road, and then at home against Missouri. The other week, but during the day, I guess they don't start well during the day. Vampires, right?
Yes. Yes.
But it's I just hope that that Shane Beamer really takes a big good look at everything coaching wise and elects to say, okay, it's this is not working.
Yeah.
How do we get it to work at the highest level to compete in this league?
Yeah, I mean, after you have a loss like you had at Florida, everybody's got to take a step back, look in the mirror, and again hold themselves accountable. JC, there's been a lot of smoke this week. I know on your message boards, other message boards about just the mood behind closed doors, if you will, and maybe some conversations that had happened. So tell us, have you heard anything similar from your people? Just, I mean, obviously after you lose the way you did, it's not shocking to me. But I mean, is there anything you can tell us about? Because again, this is, Carolina, we don't keep any secrets. Right? I feel like everything's not a poorly kept secret when it comes to Gamecocks athletics, but it's because we care so much. We're so passionate and everybody just wants to be in the know. But I mean, is there anything you can tell us in regards to any of this smoke we've seen this week in regards to behind closed doors and just the conversations that are happening?
I've had I know some info. I think that some of the actual details out there are a little fuzzy. As far as like that's not really what happened. I mean,
Right.
there's the talk that like Ray Tanner went ballistic and all that. What I can tell you is nobody, including Ray Tanner, Chance Miller, the president, Shane B, nobody was happy with the game at Florida. But there was no mandate and, flippant response. I mean, it almost made it seem sometimes like Beamer and Tanner had a big argument, and that just did not happen. Tanner was out at practice on Sunday and Monday to encourage the team. He's not snooping around, calling plays or anything like that. I will say that since the Missouri game, behind the scenes, a lot of people have realized what the issue is. And my understanding is privately, there have been some conversations that make me believe that, change is on the way. And that was the timeline I got. I mean, I think Florida was kind of the final nail in the coffin and took everybody from 0 to 60 as far as like fire him right now, but like I said, I understand why. I mean, I don't necessarily, I would have probably gotten rid of him. I'd have gotten rid of him last year, probably before the Clemson game. I've never been a fan, but this year, the chances to do it were Georgia because you had games and then time and then, maybe Missouri. Other than that, the scheduling was tough, but I don't necessarily think Florida was the final nail in the coffin for Satterfield's tenure here. I definitely think it was Missouri. So I just to kind of give people like the facts, and I know some of the folks that have posted some of that stuff, so I'm not I haven't, I need to follow up with one of them on the phone, but unfortunately he had a medical emergency, so I haven't been able to talk to him. But, so I don't want to throw them under the bus and be like, oh, they're totally wrong and I'm right or whatever. I think there's some truth to all of it, but there's some details that just didn't happen. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah. But I mean, the administration is not happy at all.
Right. I mean, that was. I mean, people have asked me about it. I'm like, yeah, people are pissed. I mean, are you surprised? I mean,
I talked to a source in the administration before the the Missouri game, and they were a little straight. Right, we got to have this one,
right?
And you saw the egg that was laid. So, and we know why. So, I think, and look, the pitchforks that are out there for Beamer right now. Okay, so today's November 17th. Then we got the 24th. So, in about, 11 days, if it's status quo, then fire up the torches and pitchforks, and that's fine. I think because at that point it's in defense. It's not defensible. Yeah. At this point, from a coaching perspective and player, you can kind of see it's a very conservative type of approach, but a lot of coaches are like that, and a lot of really good ones too. So I don't really want to destroy Shane Beamer right now over that, because I can see where he's coming from. After Clemson, win or lose, after Clemson, I can't. I mean, you're literally punching yourself in the face over and over every day you wait after that game.
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Yeah. JC, I know you got to get out of here. Last thing though, man, just real quick on the South Carolina Tennessee game, your score prediction. I'm locked in 59-13, by the way. And I'll tell you this, and I said this on your show, there have been times where I felt like the Gamecock fan base was a little bit more down and out than they probably should have been, right? Like doom and gloom. But I mean, after the performance against Florida, I think actually South Carolina fans, all things considered, have handled it rather well. I mean, Tennessee need to win in style. They've got to impress the committee. I don't feel like there's many reasons for hope and optimism. Your thoughts on the game, score prediction, how you feel like it's going to go?
I was going to predict one of the most infamous Tennessee South Carolina games in Columbia was in '98 when T. Martin, I think, completed every pass. Or 20 something in a row. I mean, it was ridiculous. I was there that day too. They won 49-14, so I was going to dust off that score prediction. But I'm going to go 49-21, and I'm going to also predict that there'll be somewhat of a moral victory claimed by someone, maybe Beamer, maybe somebody else, that they got over 20 and held them to less than 50. And then we're going to have to live with hearing that for another week. That's actually a worse score prediction for the Gamecocks. I think it's like 63-3, where you just are like, all right, that's this team's, this has to change. So I'm gonna go 49-21, and it's probably gonna be at like 49-7, and then Tennessee, play some reserves on defense, and maybe Luke Doty throws a couple of picks, and then we have a quarterback controversy on top of that for the final game. How about that?
I love it. It just gets more fun as we go, right? Yeah, I can hear the nauseating post game comments now. So, and I say that with all due respect, but
happy to hold them under 50, and woo,
this is the point we've gotten to. JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks, the Big Spur. JC, as always, again, appreciate you having me on your show. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll do it again. I'll get with you on next week. I'd love to get you on Wednesday if possible, or just any other day.
Yeah, because that's Turkey Day, and I think
everybody
we don't have the kids. The lady and I think are going to go to the casino and eat the turkey buffet, so that's going to be pretty cool.
Hey, I love it. Yeah, we'll get together and figure it out. But JC, I appreciate you as always, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah, man. Always a pleasure.